Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Carnival Row. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, based on some of the dialogue, it seems like it's been a couple months since the events of the season 1 finale, a few months at best. But it was enough for quite a few things to change, kind of continuing where the division of, hey, all Fae have to be in the row, and them kind of being locked away in that section of the city in the row. And now there's these barbed wires across the top. Makes sense. I mean, it's jacked up, but I'm like, from their perspective, it makes sense. It's like, hey, you have flying Fae that could get away. I mean, we know that they can and will shoot down any Fae that they see, but it's like they need a permanent solution so that every, Pix doesn't just end up taking off. I mean, they could probably end up getting a few, but they don't want to take the chance that some might escape. It's like, this is just a matter of control. And I mean, that's what Jonah's kind of struggling to do, is trying to maintain some form of control with everything that's going on. So I'll probably end up bouncing back and forth, but in the row, obviously we have Vignette continuing with the Black Ravens. They're sneaking out to go steal medicines from the train because that's the only way they can get any, because I'm sure it does make you wonder what the road, I mean, I guess they had to make do with whatever food they can get. There was even this kid later on that kind of used like a blow dart or whatever to kill a rat. So I'm like, doing whatever, I guess. I mean, that's the only way they're probably getting any medicine and all. Maybe the same thing for their supplies. It's like, that's what the Black Ravens have been doing. I mean, granted, the medicine stuff, that was just Vignette. Like, her and a few of the others went down that route without, getting Dahlia's blessing. But, because it makes you wonder how else is the row surviving food-wise and stuff. Because what's sad too is it seems like there's a disease going around. Maybe it's just because it's specifically affecting Pix, and I'm curious, is it just a byproduct of, hey, this is something that medicine could have easily taken care of, but because they're so compact, because they're not getting the supplies they should be getting to some extent, maybe this is something that could have been nipped in the bud initially, but now it's widespread. I mean, why is it specifically only after Pix? Why is it something that specifically affects only Pix? Maybe it's something to do with Pix's anatomy, but that's happening, and a lot of people have to deal with it. Even Ona is sick from it, and I don't know if they talked about that before. It was like, well, her and Kane, and it's like, oh, there was like 3 others with them. They were all talking about how many children they were going to have. I don't know if that was kind of. I think that I was like, oh, like that's. I think that's a little diving into like a whole Pix thing, because I don't think that came up in season 1. I'm like, oh, like. Very multiple wives type of situation. Multiple significant others when it comes to the Pix situation, but the other 3 are dead, and the only ones left are Kane and Ona. So that's very heartbreaking to see their circumstances be what they are. At the same time, Philo. He got into a paid fight, and he ended up coming out on top. Obviously, it got super roughed up in the process, but managed to hold his own against 2 opponents, plus a giant, what's that thing called? It's like a trove or trowel. It's essentially a troll. So ended up handling his own, and it seems like he didn't want money. He's trying to get Darius out of prison and I guess brought to the row. Because it's like, right, as long as Darius is there, because he's not there to back up Darius. It's like, if I come to visit you every day, plus I'm disgraced, now that I'm in disgrace, like, hey, there's no telling what's going on. And part of me wonders, it's like, are we going to sadly find out something happened to Darius because it's potentially been months, like, Philo was able to try and do something, but I don't know. I doubt that. That's probably going to fold him in and bring him into the row situation, but maybe not. We'll have to wait to see how on that, but he's trying to fix Darius' situation, trying to get him brought to the row, I think. Because it's like, especially his connection to me, people, I was already kind of his last line of defense. It's because of me. I was an inspector. I was honored, but now that, that's all kind of going down the toilet, there's no one to be looking out for Darius, and I need to have his back because no one else on that side of things will. So We also have this interesting element to the story where it seems like Piety's, I don't think was her name Horospex, or was that just a creature I think that's what type of fae she is. But the one with like the visions and stuff that work with Piety, like in the row, they're avoiding her house because it's kind of considered like haunted. Like the kids kind of dare each other to touch it. And Tourmaline goes there and sees her ghost. And I was like, right. So I was like, has that been happening the entire time, or is it just kicked up recently? Because it makes sense. I mean, Tourmaline was there at the end of season 1 when she died. And part of me wondered, like, did something pass on to her because she was inside that room? She stayed a few seconds after Philo left. So I was wondering, did something get passed on to her? Maybe it's, she was trying to find a successor. Like, maybe it's almost like this world needs someone to, like, fill that void. And Tourmaline's been chosen. Because she touched the door and she had a vision. And it seemed like Philo was there shooting at something, and all we saw was like the claw, and you're like, is it another Dark Asher? It just makes you think of that. So, or is it something else entirely? And later on, she's getting chased down by the Horospex, and it's like, she passed it on to Tourmaline. I guess it was just kind of because I guess some fragment of her spirit still remained. Because the whole point was like, right, I'm going to go back over. I'm going to cross back over. She made sure that her spirit stayed here long enough. But maybe the spirit's been here the entire time trying to find a suitable host. And Tourmaline ends up filling that for whatever reason. Maybe Tourmaline just happens to be that person because she happened to... Maybe like it can't be Philo because Philo's got his own destiny, and the fact is him being half Pix, half human makes him kind of ineligible for it, and she happened to be just in there, like, so maybe she got a little bit of like that residue of her spirit latched onto her back then, and the rest of it's just been trying to find its way to her. So, but it seems like it takes control of her, and she ended up having a vision of the officer Anders that ended up getting killed. And obviously, she subconsciously ended up mutilating a little girl's cat in the process of, like, reading the organs to have the vision. So she hasn't talked to anyone, including Vignette, about it, though it sounds like she's been avoiding Vignette like the plague. Understandable, as we know, like, Tourmaline and her have a past, and she's still in love with her. It's like, right, I get you love Philo loves you, and she doesn't want to mess with that. So I don't know if it's just... And the way she talks about it, she's like, yeah, you ever get that feeling like, it's like something bad's about to happen? And so that's why I'm wondering, has this thing been happening for a while and it just finally reached its like crescendo in a musical sense, like it reached its peak, and this is just kind of the final, like, it was always leading up to this just off screen in the time between season 1's finale and this premiere. And so, but also I think like her feelings for Vignette have kind of played a role in her not wanting to be around her, because I'm like, I don't know if Vignette really, like, she realizes, because like, yeah, they kissed like last season, but I don't know if it really registered. Like, no, she's still in love with you, she respects what you and Philo have, but it still doesn't make it any easier of a pill to swallow. So I don't know, or is it just everything she's dealing with on this more spooky front? We'll have to wait and see. Which I do think it's so interesting that he ended up getting summoned by Berwick, because it's like, hey, there's this investigation that's going on, and then he needs he knows that regardless of it all, Philo might be half fae, but it's like, doesn't change the fact that you were a damn good inspector, so I'm asking you to investigate this. He's treating it like, okay, so it's got to be one of the picks from the robberies, because the guy that died, it's significant that he was one of the people on the train. So it's like, that's interesting, because now we ended up learning that the Dark Asher had Piety's, like, Piety was the driving force behind it, and she had her reasons for it. So it's like, right, if this is a Dark Asher situation, again, someone's doing this on purpose. Now the situation is going to be figuring out the underlying connection. This is just one, and I'm sure this won't be the last. So Philo's going to find himself at the center of all this again. I mean, Berwick brought him in, but none of the others. Specifically, was it Doombe doesn't like the fact is that he's involved. It's like, oh, get this, fae out of here. I'm not going to use the derogatory term that they use to describe the fae, Critch. I'm not going to even, but regardless. I think Philo isn't going to think, like, he's not going to think they did it, but it's like, right, the position of the body, it's not like the Dark Asher before where it's like, hey, it ripped. To be fair, I was like, was that Dark Asher made from Pick's bodies, though? It was made from the other creatures, like a Puck, a Trove, and other, but it wasn't, was it, I don't remember it being made from a Pix. So could it be now made from a Pix or what? The way it was able to get the body so high up. That's why he thinks like it has to be one of the Picks. But it's like, I'm sure Philo's looking at it like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Especially because Vignette and them had their faces covered, so it's not like they'd be recognizable regardless. That might even be the guy that Vignette spared, because like, I think specifically her, the Black Ravens as a whole, they're not going to care about saving human lives, but Vignette doesn't want to kill people, because I think for her, it's like spilling human blood is just going to make the situation in a row worse. We're going to cause more problems for them in the long run. But I think it's just in general that maybe Vignette doesn't want to spill any blood, because in retrospect, it's like, I was about to say, like, she hasn't killed anyone. It's like, I think the only person that I can think of that she's actually directly killed was Piety, because even the guy that was the insider, like, Philo's the one that finished him off, if I remember correctly. So, but Piety's like the only person Vignette's killed, so, you know, obviously she's probably not too keen on killing people, so there's probably that, but also just doesn't want to cause backlash for the role, maybe. So theft is one thing, but murder will just kind of heighten that even more, so. But I talked about it earlier, and it's time to kind of shift over to that, is the whole situation with Jonah. He ended up publicly executing Quill and the rest of the Puck that were working with him, which I was like, to my recollection, the only one that they caught was Quill. So I wondered, did they interrogate him and find the others? Because it looked like it was like, yeah, the others in that group, but that wasn't all of them. There was quite a few of them that was a part of all of that. So maybe only like some of the top people died, or maybe that's all of them. But obviously, it's not just Absalom's death they're putting on him. It's on them. It's also Piety's death, which obviously it's like, yes, he had a role in playing. I mean, the point was to try and kill your father. He didn't die from the wounds. Piety ended up being that, but it's like, you can't really get into semantics of that, because the city is the powder keg that it is, and it's already been in a heightened state. So Jonah's means, more so Sophie's idea, is to rein everything in by kind of having like a stern foot. It's like, yeah, my father was lenient and forgiving and showed mercy. I'm not going to do the same. Got to show an iron fist rule, because that way you rein in the people of the Burg who are, you know, like spiraling up. You kind of give them like some hate, something to kind of focus on, and they make things worse by taking those heads. I don't know if that was his decision, that was Sophie's decision, or whether that was just the officers, like, you know, freestyling when they basically put those heads on pikes, basically on the wall, just to be like, yeah, see what happens. You know, and it's pretty jacked up. Obviously, they've got no love for the face, so they're not, oh, your kids are going to see, oh, boo-hoo. Oh, well, that's on you, so. But you could tell, like, it hurt Jonah to do it, because now he's like, man, I didn't want this position. This was kind of thrust upon me. I took the responsibility up because I kind of felt like I had no other choice. He has Millworthy by his side, but even then, he's not always listening to Millworthy. It's just like, right, he had to execute people. He has to play up this role to try and keep balance in the Burg. But Millworthy's like, hey, could you, like, come down to the row? And he's like, right, you think you're smarter than me. He's like, Millworthy, I know what you're doing. You're trying to get me to go to the row because you think it'll make me more sympathetic, and I'll try and help out. It's like, but he can't really stand on that position because no one will back him. It's like, we have to stand united on this platform of anti-Fae. So, and especially because him and Sophie are in a complicated position. Their positions were kind of given them by, well, Sophie, it's like, right, it's still that mourning period, so she's able to keep the position for now, but eventually an election's going to come up, and it's going to be someone from that side actually taking the reins, and Jonah only has his position because his father was a chancellor and is dead. So, we also learned that people from the pack are showing up, which I was like, oh, interesting. Because I thought that was so interesting that so I guess they're making that a major plot point this season. I mean, it makes sense. It's been a big division of like, but you know, the both sides of the Berg and the Pact and the Fae kind of caught between. It makes sense, but it's like I thought that was a storyline element of like it's a world building thing that they never touch on. It's like, oh, so we're bringing that into like a full fold of this season. Interestingly enough, so I'm curious to see what happens there between the Pact and the Berg. What those discussions look like, and also what that means in the long run for the Fae who are caught in between. Because we've seen what the Berg is like with the with Fae. We haven't fully seen what it's like with the Pact and Fae. You know, maybe we'll get a little slice of that this season. I'm sure it's very much the same. I mean, it might be hard to imagine, but maybe it's actually worse. I think they talked about it a little bit about like Fae under the Pact's rule instead of, you know, the Berg. We also have the Agrias and Imogen storyline where she's having nightmares of her brother tracking her down and killing her. And I think she doesn't want to tell Agrias like that's one of her main reasons why. Because it's like, oh, he's like, I want to build a life with you. Like we stopped at ports, but we haven't actually made a home anywhere. I'm tired of running. Let's set down roots and make a home. But for her, it's like, here on the sea, we get to be free. We get to be us. We don't have to be adherent to anyone else, because it's like the people in the boat, they're fine with everything. But the moment we touch down land, we're going to have to adhere to other people's rules. And it's like, no matter where we go. And I think it's also terrifying that it's like, I mean, their family's not well off, so he doesn't have the resources anymore, the pay for like hunting them down. But Ezra could get very creative with that. And I think it's just, and even if it's not Ezra, he's a symptom of a larger issue of like, will we ever be accepted anywhere else? So can we just stay out to sea a little longer? And he's like, fine. If you want to stay out to sea, that's fine. If that's what you need and what you want, because he just wants to make her happy. But that's the thing. He wants to set down roots because I want to be able to spoil you. And I love her saying, like, for her, it's like, she had these walls around her and she never realized it until she finally went through those walls. It's a thing of, I was trapped in this maze my entire life, surrounded in this life that I thought was making me happy, but it made her kind of a shallow, spoiled person. And she's grown and changed and adapted. And if she doesn't want to go back to that, now that it's that thing of once your eyes are open, you can never close them again. She doesn't want to, because she's happy right now where they are. But that happiness is short-lived when the Pack ship shows up. And I'm wondering, are they going to be heralded to like Pack territory, or what's going to happen there? We'll ultimately have to wait to see what the aftermath of that ends up being. I actually forgot to talk about the whole element of Millworthy, and which I should, like, him coming back to the row, he's not seen as the friend and ally, even though that's what he's trying to be, trying to do everything he can to sway Jonah, which even Philo's like, I mean, I don't know why you put so much faith in, why you believe he can change. He's like, yes, any man can change. And he believes that with the right push, that's why he was glad that, like, it's like, right. The fact is Jonah was even willing to hire me as kind of his advisor, kind of speaks that he is, someone that can be swayed to kind of go and do what's right. So, but the problem is Philo's like, he's not doing enough. So what I can do is reveal myself to the world. He's only in that position because he's Absalom's eldest son. It's like, well, he's not even Absalom's son. Because Philo doesn't know that he's not Absalom's son, because that was a secret only Absalom might have slightly known, but obviously it's something only him, Piety, and Sophie actually knows. So he has actually even more claims. It's not even just you're the older son thing. It's like, well, even if you want to say like, oh, because he, Absalom was like his father, raised him and everything. It's like still Philo is the oldest, but once again, he actually has Absalom's blood. So that's also the difference. But also, once again, you're half Fae. They're never going to let you in that position. He's like, if anything, this whole thing will lead to you dying. But for Philo, it's like, even if they don't put me in that position, even if I don't replace Jonah as Chancellor, at the very least, it will push him out of power. And whoever it is that's in that position can't be worse. It's like, regardless of it all, I think Jonah at least has a conscience about all of this. Granted, he has like Sophie being kind of like the devil, the devil on his shoulder. That might be the worst aspect of this whole situation. I mean, not unless she tries to take advantage of it and tries to position herself there. Um, Maybe. Do we know which one of them is the oldest? I'd assume Jonah is, but I was about to say like, well, I was about to say like, because I was about to say like, if she's actually Home Dude's actual daughter and Jonah's his actual son as well, not Absalom, the other guy, Longbane, what's his name? Then I was thinking like, if she's the oldest, could she take the position? But once again, she's a woman. You know, women in position of powers. Obviously, that's not something. In this like Victorian era world, like obviously that's not a no go. So like even if she was the oldest, that probably still wouldn't be. They still wouldn't let that slide by. But maybe she could still like swing the election her way. I don't know. I'm interested to see what that kind of potentially could be on that front. Like what ends up being the aftermath, because Philo thinks he's going to be doing more good, but he could end up doing more harm in the long run with such a gamble, you know, and Millworthy is going to help him out with it. So we'll see how that turns out. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of these elements ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.